Hi, I'm Jo Gakonga and this is part 2 in the video series Making the Most of Teaching Practice Observation Time. In part 1 we looked at using technology, using a chat room to get trainees interacting together in order to get the most out of teaching practice observation. In this video we're going to look at what's the deal about this. What are the pros? What are the cons? What's good about it? Let's start with the positives. So the first thing is that the trainees absolutely loved it on the course that I did. It was immediate feedback for them and for them to give feedback as well as read it. It was really engaging. It made them so much more involved in observation of teaching practice. And it allowed real-time communication with each other without disturbing the teacher who was teaching. One of the big things for me is that you can upload and share files, particularly lesson plans. This is so helpful. I wouldn't want to watch a lesson without a lesson plan, but that's what we expect trainees to do most of the time. You can share paper plans, but that's a lot of paper. Having it online makes it very easy, very logistically straightforward. So they can actually follow what's going on and you can ask them questions and point out things about the plan and the way it relates to the lesson. You can also share articles, websites, materials that you find, and they can share those things with each other as well. So that's really helpful. You can include pictures. While people are teaching, perhaps the board work might be something useful to reflect on later, or where they stand when they're monitoring. You can include short videos, perhaps of instructions or concept check questions. Again, very helpful for reflection after the event. This makes it a permanent record, which, I've got a question mark here over whether it's helpful for feedback or not. I think you have to be a little bit careful because obviously they will come back and read everything that people have said, and this may preclude them having their own reflections. But you can also always manage that by just telling them to write their reflections before they read the chat room record. Another nice thing about having a chat room like this is that the messages don't have to be public. You can send private messages. Perhaps someone's just done a lesson and they're sitting down looking really sad and dejected. You can send them a little private message and say, "Don't worry, it was fine, write your feedback." Or perhaps somebody isn't including themselves in the chat very much. You can just send them a private message and say something like, "Haven't heard much from you today, what do you think about this?" So that's really nice. It doesn't all have to be public. So we've looked at all the good things. Of course there are some problems, so let's have a look at those too. The big one, of course, is that if you don't have good Wi-Fi, this isn't going to work. You could still use the same kind of idea with paper, but it isn't quite so good, I don't think. The other thing is time. Probably what you're saying is, but I'm already really busy observing and writing feedback and I don't have time to do anything else. What I found was that I replaced the running commentary that I usually write on people's feedback with the hip chat. So I just wrote a front page. This was fine and this took all of the stress out of it for me. And I think that if somebody wanted afterwards if the trainees want to look at what a running commentary was, they can look at the hip chat or they can look at the chat. And if an assessor wanted to look at this afterwards, they could too. So that's not a problem, I think. And it was really fine just to have a front sheet and then use the chat room as a running commentary. Here's another question. What about the people who are always writing? What about the people who never do? Well, that's true for oral feedback as well, isn't it? And I think you just have to use the same kind of strategies. Encourage everybody to take part. perhaps nominate individuals, and you can do that privately, as I just said before. And the same issues which, again, are problematic with oral feedback. What happens if someone says something really negative? What happens if somebody says something that's actually wrong or unhelpful, or you disagree with? Well, they could say those things in oral feedback too. I think you do have to perhaps set some ground rules, but as with oral feedback, people generally are more kind than they need to be rather than the other way around. I think you can encourage positive comments and set an example, but didn't seem to be a big problem. And I think private messages also could be helpful. So the balance for me was very, very much in favour of the pros. There are some issues to think about, but it's a very, very positive thing. And as I say, the trainees really liked it. They were very, very enthusiastic about it. So that's given you an idea of what's good and what you need to look out for. Let's have a look in the next video about some of the practicalities of this.